Before the show starts, again, just like to say a big thank you to the sponsors: Air Canada Cargo, ATC Aviation, Bombelli, Cool Dolly and Cool Storage Solution, Etihad Cargo, and Sarco Airport Equipment. Thank you all so much. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, listeners and colleagues, here we are again, another session of the Pharma Digital event. Got two great guys here and good guests, and probably you've already seen we're having a little bit of a competition with beards at the moment. The gents I'm talking about, we've got Barrie Sears, who's sales consultant, Tower Cold Chain Solutions. So Barrie, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
And we got Mark Hague, branch manager for GEODIS. Mark, lovely to have you on board.
Thank you.
People can send their votes in later on as to which beard they think should be shaved off. Not the best one, but which one should be shaved off. Guys, listen, thanks very much for joining us. Before we get into just general discussion, can you just let us know a little bit about you? What do you do, and what has the last 6 to 9 months impact been on you in your position and also your business? So maybe we start with you, Mark.
Yeah, good morning. I'm the I'm the branch manager at GEODIS Manchester. I've been branch manager for almost 4 years with GEODIS for the past 6. And our main area is the export of pharma globally, predominantly by air freight, a little bit of sea freight, but yeah, mainly air. The last 9 months, difficult to say the least. Capacity with airlines, getting space, the prices have gone through the roof. It's been a bit of a nightmare, but it's pharma, it has to be moved, and yeah, we've been just as busy, if not busier, over the last 9 months.
Okay, right, lovely. And Barrie?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, Barrie Sears from Tower Cold Chain Solutions. I look after specific accounts for at Tower, and also help them with their hub and business development globally. Again, the last sort of 6 or 9 months has been quite challenging, as Mark says. I mean, we've had to react quite quickly and quite swiftly to customers' changes and what they've had to deal with as well. I would say it's obviously been busier, which has been good, but I think we're in the challenging situation where there is the normal business that goes through Tower, on a regular pattern, but also we're having to adapt to what's around the corner in regards to project clinical trials, for the vaccines globally, where our units are used. So as a business, we've seen a big ramp up in activity, but it's been challenging, as Mark says. We know the pressures Mark's under. At GEODIS as a business, so we've got to look to sort of help them with the issues they've got. So it's an interesting and good challenge, I'd say, Chris, to be honest. But it's interesting times.
No, it is indeed, and I think obviously for me anyhow, I love to see when good news comes out, and then how people and industries respond to it. And I like everybody, I suppose, I keep watching various governments, various politicians, and poor old Boris himself. They have to say certain things, they have to do certain things, but they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. It's a terrible situation to be in. And then you got the sort of conundrum, or the challenge between, do you let people have Christmas, do you not? All the other festivals, for all the other different denominations around the world, is it fair, is it not? It's a terrible situation. But the aviation industry now, and cargo specifically, are getting such a profile that they've never had before. So it's so important that with the eyes of the world on the industry, that we do things right and there's no spoilage. Now, to get a chance to talk to two people who live with the pharma community and understand everything that goes on is great, because what we want to do is we want to give everybody who's listening to these sessions that the industry is very, very capable, very regulated, focuses on standards, and has been doing it for a long, long, long time. So before we get into the specifics, moving from Pfizer to Moderna to Oxford, we've got Sinovac, Sputnik 5, and there's going to be several others. I think there's about 13 in phase 3 that are going to be out, and people are going to start hearing about. So there's going to be a big selection, and that selection is going to cover from the extreme temperature control and storage levels. So what I'd like to do is, firstly, Mark, I'd like to start with you. Now, in your day-to-day life and in your dealing with the pharma community, who is very close-knit, they all know each other, they all know what standards and what's expected. What is the actual process that you have to deal with when you're dealing with these pharma organizations? What's your, what are the challenges? What do you have to be aware of? What do you have to understand so that you're able to talk the same language with them, so that they get a confidence that by giving you the business, you're going to look after their best interests both up and downstream?
Well, we need to be able to show them that we can handle their business, that we can look after it from their premises right through to the end, right to the final mile, to ensure that the temperatures are looked after, that the product is travels safely all the way through, and following all the guidelines, the number of guidelines we've got, the GDP. I mean, we're governed by the MHRA in the UK, and we need to be able to show that we can we look after that product, and that we select the correct airlines to look after it all the way through.
Now, with under normal circumstances, and there's all different types of vaccines and medicines and equipment, and there's clinical trials, all things. What is sort of on the menu of goods that you have to frequently organise for transportation?
Well, currently,
just in general. So forgetting what the challenges are that are going to come.
Yeah. I mean, currently we carry a lot of cancer drugs and anaesthetics for AstraZeneca. We've been carrying them for numerous years now at various different temperature ranges. We've got the cold chain. We've also got the ambient. But for the cold chain, we use Tower quite a lot, and we do use active solutions as well for certain destinations. That is our bread and butter at the moment. And yeah, if the vaccines do come along, then it will be a bit of a game changer for us all, I think.
Okay. Now something that I think was Barrie, you were saying about the capacity and about you supporting. Now, with the pressures on capacity because of the reduction in passenger equipment, and obviously everybody was rushing during the PPE days to try and get capacity, which inflated prices beyond all realms of logic. Everybody's assuming that there's going to be another massive rush, with the vaccines. But one of the things I just wanted to speak to you about now, as far as Mark's selections as to which carrier, when he's made those selections and the carrier flies it wherever, obviously there's the transportation period between the aircraft and the GHA facility. So that's where you come in with the supply of specific and specialist equipment. So whether it's active air cargo or deep frozen transport or storage, that's where you come in. So can you just give us a little bit of an overview of the types of equipment that you offer?
Sure, definitely, Chris. I mean, we're quite lucky. We've got a varied solution repertoire, and we're quite fortunate. Is we deal with several logistics areas in the business, so we can deal with the specialist couriers, some of our customers, and they'll be moving clinical trial material, clinical trial drugs, finished product, that type of thing. And then we'll work with the major pharmaceutical companies, and again in coordination with Mark, and supplying them solutions that we offer. They're all preconditioned, so we try to make it as easy as possible to take the troubles away from the 3PLs. And to make their life easy. So, I mean, in regards to temperatures, our solutions range from -80, which is obviously quite pertinent now, up to controlled ambient 15 to 25, -20, and obviously 2 to 8. I mean, we're quite fortunate in the fact we've got, you know, various sizes from, you know, a small box size up to units that hold 2 pallets of product. I mean, the trick for us at the moment really is placement of units and where they end up globally, which is always a challenge. I mean, it's not just for us; it's with the other, you know, passive lease guys in the industry. We've all got you know, we've all got all our issues, but that's probably the one that we have to, you know, it's probably the most difficult one to manage. So you, for example, you'll have a, you know, quite a strong lane from Europe and US to China, and there's not much coming out of China, which is temperature controlled. So you've got a real imbalance, and it's just making sure, you know, we're there to make sure, you know, Mark's got the units that he needs coming out of the UK, for example, and managing we can serve and make sure we can service it. So that's probably the biggest challenge at the moment that we have, I think.
And with the reduction in capacity, that's going to become even more of a problem moving forward.
Yeah, potentially it is. I mean, we're quite versatile because we can, you know, we can return units by, you know, by ocean freights. We can also return them by train and rail networks, road networks. You know, we work with the airlines to ship units back. So again, it's pretty flexible. But say with the capacity issues, obviously, you know, it's very expensive at the moment. So, you know, flying empty units back isn't really a sensible.
Yeah, no, 100%. And now, Mark, with some of the decisions that you have to make, obviously we've spoken about standards and regulatory criteria, etc. There's a lot of discussion, and there has been now, about how timely and relevant the focus on GDP and CEIV has been. Have you got any, you know, have you got any feedback, any overview on both, or as a combination?
I was briefly discussed before. When I first heard about CEIV, I did believe, that it was IATA sort of jumping on the bandwagon a little bit with it. I think it's a very good idea that they've come up with, but I think it needs to be a little bit more. I don't think you don't get the full impact of what they are trying to do. One thing I look at when if you walk into a warehouse anywhere in the world, you'll see dangerous goods in a corner, and there'll be something on the wall. It'll tell you that dangerous good can't be with that, and that will be any warehouse on an airport in the world. With the CEIV, these are life-saving drugs, and you can walk into a warehouse somewhere in the world, and there'll be a pallet of pharma just dropped in the corner. To me, it's not policed enough, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think it needs to be more controlled, and I think rather than IATA coming up with their version and the various different bodies around the world covering GDP, I think it needs to be more. They need to work together more. That to me would be the way forward.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And we did touch base earlier about, you know, 3 sort of words that probably won't be used by the next generation, or they'll even be blocked, which is unprecedented, task force, and collaboration. Even though it's so relevant, but it's more important to practice rather than talk about those particular issues. Now, just one. I've got a friend, and he invited me to have a look around his facility. His name's Rob Williams with Thermo Fisher, and one of the things I was so impressed with was that every single member of staff, and from all different cultures, countries, the one common denominator they had was the signage in all their facilities, and everything about the commodities and the chemicals, the pharmaceuticals, everything. There was a purpose, and they knew what illness it was for. And they were able to then relate to that, and they understood why it was so important to handle them in a certain way. And then they had videos of families that had, you know, obviously members of their family affected. And they all believed that what they were doing was that they were distributing, supplying, and producing hope. And it made people handle things differently. And I think what you're saying there about the understanding, when you've got dangerous goods and safety in general in the aviation sector, which is so good, everybody's aware of what can happen to you, which is why there's a focus on it. But then when you come to pharmaceuticals, it's what you could do that could then have an effect on somebody else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that training and that awareness is something that, people are focusing more on, because it's so more important to know why you're doing something rather than what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and where to do it. So I think that's something that's important.
Yeah, I think you can get like an airline will have an accreditation, but there'll be various stations around the world that aren't accredited, but yet the airline has the accreditation. And I know that GHAs also get accredited, and actual airports. But yeah, I think it does. I think it does need that. It needs to be a little bit more robust, because yeah, you can have a bloke unloading a vehicle who absolutely no idea why that pallet has to be kept at 15 to 25,
And for how long?
and exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And they should. To me, you shouldn't, unless you are fully trained and you're signed off, you should not handle or have anything to do with those goods, exactly the same as you would with dangerous goods.
Yeah, and these are the pressures now that are on organisations that have had to put people on furlough, and then reduce the numbers of workforce. It's so important now to maintain that awareness and training.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is, yeah, and it's Mark alluded to, and everything that that he transports in regards to the pharma side, that's going to go into a person. So that could be someone's mother, father, children, and it's just getting that awareness there. I mean, it's commonly known, obviously with the clinical trial side of the business and the samples, they're shipped around the world globally to prove the efficacy of a drug, and each blood sample or serum sample has actually come out of a person that's probably very ill and taken the time to go to a clinic and have their samples taken. So you've got to sort of respect that, and I think that's what the good thing about the industry is, the more awareness we can build into it, the better it will be. Yeah,
and that efficacy, and sometimes the time constraints, to move. It's so important that it's really accurate. It's well handled. You can't question it. It's the most critical thing.
It is, and I've been quite fortunate over the years since I've worked in cold chain for over 25 years now, and it's great to see how the solutions have evolved, and the way the handling is. It's nowhere unrecognisable to what it was 25 years ago. It's a completely different industry now, and for all the good points, and I think it's moving at such a pace now. I think over the next couple of years we'll see a lot of improvements, and again we'll probably, the next 2 years will probably go as the developments will probably be faster than we have in the last 10 years, because everybody will be moving, design different ways of doing things. So it's just interesting times, I think.
Yeah, and it's amazing how this pandemic has pushed so much forward, from digitization to bureaucracy, getting rid of unnecessary admin, legacy waste. It's really built almost 10 years into 1 year.
Completely, and I think also with what people want to do now is do more with less, and be very cute with solutions, and there still is the waste issue. It's streamlining things, and I think with the capacity with the airlines, or the lack of capacity, I think that's highlighted the way we have to do things more efficiently. And again, I think that will drive on now the next sort of 2 to 5 years, where efficiencies will come into the to come into the industry as well. Yeah,
which obviously then improves the costs, etc., which helps people make the right decisions rather than trying to work out a balance.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Mark, when you make your decisions, and obviously the decisions you've made have been for certain reasons, what criteria are you looking for in the carrier and in the carrier's choice of the GHA, so that you're able to maintain that focus, accountability all the way downstream?
Well, the carrier's choice of the GHA is not really anything that we have any say over. I mean, we had one of our main carriers, one of the Middle Eastern ones, that they've got an amazing hub out in the Middle East. They've just switched GHA in the UK, in Manchester, which hasn't had a massive effect on us. We made sure that we wanted to check that they still had the
Yeah.
cold rooms and this, that, and the other. But to us, that's not a major player. It's more of the carrier themselves and how they're going to handle it going through their hubs.
Yeah.
And one of the main things we do look at is that their hubs are good and that they do have reefers or cool dollies on the ramps, that they've got the storage facilities, and that also the way they handle it, and that they have got the accreditations there. That, in fairness, the majority of the Middle Eastern carriers are brilliant. The stuff they've done out in the Middle East is great. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, and with the extreme temperatures there, it's an incentive they have to do it. And obviously, being a hub, they've got to make sure that they're able to, offer as good, if not in some cases better, than some of the point-to-point services that are being available.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, nothing's ever perfect. There's, one of the carriers we use. It's great if we send a full aircraft pallet in. They'll carry it. It gets taken off. It gets put into a reefer. It goes into a cool room. It doesn't even touch the outside air. If we send single pallets, then it's different, because then they don't go into the cool rooms. They go into ambient warehouses, which is fine at this time of year, but in the middle of the summer, it's no good. So we have to look at certain times of the year, which products we send with which carrier.
Okay, so seasonality influence comes into it as well because of the handling capability. Yeah.
We have a seasonal carrier program, which we look at the temperatures globally, and that's how we determine which carrier is going to have that product for that certain time of the year. But we do have numerous ones. Obviously, we have backup carriers as well. But yeah, we do try and follow the seasonal.
Okay, good. And Barrie, obviously now for what's really important, and especially now with some of the media interest, and media have already, they've already done visits to Brussels. There's going to be a lot of focus now on what really is logistics. So there's going to be a lot of, this is how it. I'm pretty sure we're going to get some of the journalists following a vaccine from point to point, just to prove where things could go wrong or whatever. And that's unfortunately one of the challenges that as an industry we've got to face. But to keep everybody in a confident frame, the tracking and some of the loggers and the way now we can control it, obviously your equipment as well helps. So do you want to just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the tail cold chain solutions, Chris, have got built-in data loggers. So I mean, it's really it's twofold. It's for us to know that when we send the unit out to the customer, albeit to Mark, then it's at the right temperature. So that's our check and balance, and also we can download all the data from the unit when it comes back into a tower hub, and we're all aware that with all the I'd probably say, or probably 99% of all the consignments that go into our units are temperature monitored in their own right. So they'll carry their own temperature monitors. But so we download the data as well as a backup to customers should something go wrong with their temperature monitors, or so we can see what the units experienced in transit. And it's not unknown for loggers not to be turned on and for them to go wrong during a trip. So we're very mindful that we've got to make sure that we've got that data stored, and we store that for sort of 5 to 7 years as well to comply with the pharmaceutical and requirements. I mean, the real-time monitoring is obviously is of use, and that's something that's coming out more and more. But like anything, real-time monitoring, if something is going wrong, you may know about it, but can you get to it? So it's all very well finding out that the temperature's slowly going up in Riyadh, for example, with the unit, then you're going to get into a critical point. But that's all very well if you know that, but can you actually do something about it? But I mean, any evidence and data is all good, Chris. Yeah.
I think you mentioned Riyadh there. I think Omar Hariri now they've just opened their new pharma facility there. So. Yeah,
I mean, as you well know, there's a lot of product gets shipped over to the Middle East, and they've got their challenges. But again, but for those markets, because it is so challenging, as we were talking about some of the, Middle Eastern carriers, they've really probably got it, buttoned up, as good as any other airline and as good as any other service, because they have to.
Yeah. I think collectively the last five years especially has been phenomenal in the Middle East. They've done an incredible job. All of them.
Yeah, without a doubt. No, absolutely. Again, and that does the challenges they have. It's quite unique. So, that they've got the worst problems to solve. I think that's the thing, and they've made a lot of effort and to remedy that.
Yeah, no, it's very positive. Coming back to you again, Mark. When pharmaceutical companies have to decide where their products are going and who's going to manage them, etc., I've always found that if you have a certain way of thinking, and if you've got then a way of showing that you actually practice what you preach, they become a lot more open and a lot more supportive. And when you're dealing with certain companies, you straight away, you can align with the culture, and that culture of that particular organization, or how it's being led by the top, is also what's reflected at the bottom, and that gives you a little bit more comfort.
Yes, in a way, yeah. I mean, we deal with one main manufacturer at the moment, but we also deal with quite a lot of smaller companies. The majority of them are the distributors. They're not actual manufacturers. They're small distributors. You do find that with the small distributors, there's not as much. It's more cost based for them, rather than what we are offering as a service, and that can be quite difficult for us, because we want to make sure we do it properly. We've got WDA, we follow GDP to the letter, and it can be quite difficult to go back to these companies and say, well, this is the cost because you are getting this from us. We will make sure that your product gets there. And I think they need a little bit more understanding, if that makes sense. The larger companies, yeah, absolutely. They know they need that we will look after their products, and that is why we're doing what we're doing. But yeah, the distributors, there doesn't seem to be as much care, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And that's also why now, as a complete community, we've got to try and cover all of those areas, because if it's cost driven or procurement driven, and then certain packaging or certain times or certain connectivity for a more competitive price, then that brings problems to the whole supply chain.
Exactly, yeah.
And, even though carriers and GHAs might be doing their own self-assessments, internal audits, spot checks, zone management checks, whatever it is, it's very difficult for them then to identify something that actually should have been either described properly at the beginning, or prepared properly, or noticed properly, so that there's a fair chance of dealing with it correctly all the way through.
Yeah. I mean, we get certain customers that will say, we offer to put a blanket, to protect it.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, somebody's come to the door. We offer to put blankets.
It's not the barber, is it? It's not.
No, not the barber. No.
When they finish, just send them over to Barrie and myself.
Yeah, I'll book in a minute. Yeah, sorry, where was it? Blankets. You'll get certain. Yeah, they would rather not pay for that. Do you know? Whereas to me, it's essential. Everything be covered with something to protect it, because you're going to get the elements wherever you go. Whether it's going to be cold or warm, you need to protect the goods. And yeah, like you say, at GHA, they can get a pallet in. It's pharmaceuticals, but there's no cover on it, and they then start questioning that. Well, why? And it's because that distributor doesn't want to pay for it.
Yeah. And I think that's why. I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware. IATA set out some guidelines last weekend, especially for vaccines and what's coming up, and to make people more aware. I think the points we're discussing here now, they should be prerequisites and people shouldn't have the choice.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're sending, just say, I mean, just for a comparison, if you're sending a tomato from A to B, you don't want people squeezing it, dropping it, throwing it. And, that's very simplistic, but I think there should be such clear now instructions on what should be done if it's a certain type or commodity or reference or whatever. No exceptions, zero tolerance.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, guys, and also, with the temperature excursion, that's everyone's sort of nightmare, isn't it, Mark? But operationally, you've got a temperature excursion, and I've dealt with many in the past from various different hats on, but the time and effort that's spent on rectifying that, and looking into where that happened, why it happened. Going through the CAPA process is very costly, a lot of man hours, and we just like to see that nice flat line of temperature. But as soon as you get those excursions, and it's a real big issue, for everybody, and it's just trying to to avoid those, really, because it's very costly, and it takes a lot of man hours to resolve.
Yeah, and also affects people. It affects people's lives.
That's it, yeah, and I mean they're put on, they're put on hold. So if just a pallet of product arrives and it can't be signed off by quality to be used, it's it doesn't go anywhere. So there's a lot of money and time stopped just with that that consignment. So it's just putting processes in place to avoid that. That's the crucial thing.
Yeah, and it's that awareness, isn't it? Because if that testing process is broken, then you've got to wait again, and then you've got all the volunteers who've basically it's been no good. And then equally, if something gets spoiled, it's terrible.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's right. And it's about mitigating those elements, and as Mark will probably agree with me, that the last thing you want to see is a temporary excursion on a shipment, and we've just got to work together to avoid those issues.
Yeah. Now, Barrie, you also deal directly with some of the largest pharma companies as clients, so you know exactly what their priorities and their focus is. Can you just give us a little bit of exactly how explicit they are?
Yeah, I'd say that they'd have to be very, very explicit, to be honest, because a lot of time and money spent on developing their products, whether it be drugs or vaccines, and they've got to transport a rigid temperature range. I mean, we've probably seen, it's probably fair to say, with some of the large pharma companies over the years, that they used to do a lot of their solution evaluation in-house. So, for example, one of the large pharma companies will look at various packaging systems, whether it be single use or multiple use, or active units or passive units, such as Tower. They did a lot of time and put a lot of effort into looking at what's on the market and what would work best. But I think it's fair to say, over the last, certainly I've seen over the last 5 years, they're putting more and more onus on the logistics companies to make that decision, which is probably a good thing in my opinion, because the logistics guys know what works for them. They know what works in the market. They know how that goes with the airline and what solutions to use. And so the pharmaceutical companies know what they need, but not necessarily know how it will work in a logistics capacity. So I think that's been a very good sea change. It doesn't happen for every company, but Mark will probably sees a bit more of that, where the pharmaceutical company will go to the 3PLs and say, right, this is our temperature range, we've got to transport it at that, you tell us how you do it, and you provide the solution. So it's I think personally it's been a positive change.
And then they still do their own risk assessment of that solution.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they'll do the risk assessment with their logistics provider. So again, it's I think it's a good trend, and I'd like to see that sort of continue. I think that it's a positive step.
Yeah, and also from a mitigation perspective, they also cover power outage and all sorts.
Yeah, exactly. Again, and that would be with logistics companies to put that whole solution together, because again, back to temperature excursions, they're sort of pretty much benchmarks on that. Obviously there's cost elements, but there's service elements, but really what Mark's trying to avoid is is really any temporary excursions, because that's probably, you know, how they'll be, assessed and benchmarked as they go on with the contract.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Now, Mark, personally, I think the whole industry and cross industries now, it's a chance to take stock, look back, and now look at what's happening at the moment. So there are a lot of people who've been displaced, a lot of people have lost their jobs, a lot of people who are going to be expected to come back and have a rapid reboot and be put under pressure. So there's an awful lot of difference now between people that are put in leadership roles as to what people understood as far as leadership previously. Now, I think there's an opportunity to look at leadership in a different way, to teach people how to deal with the current problems, concerns, and issues, whether it be from SMS, human factors, you know, anxiety, mental issues, etc., worrying about money, worrying about your partner, worrying about who's looking after the kids. All these things that are coming into play now are so different. Almost there's a need for a new chapter in the SMS manual based around it. But I think equally it's important now for that a sort of a leadership awareness to be given to all members of staff, so that they understand that somebody has to make those decisions, somebody has to lead, and to receive it well and appreciate good leadership is part of that overall caring culture that then looks after the company. Because the one thing all companies have seen now is the importance of continuity and sustainability. And, you know, this pandemic has really pushed that across. Now, that's what I'd like to see, but that's just me. And nobody listens to me, including the barber, as you can see. But if you were given the chance now, okay, what would you like to see develop over this next year? Because this next year is going to be a hugely innovative, hugely creative, hugely caring, I believe, year across all industries. So what would you like to see happen in this next year from the parties that influence your work and your success?
I would say more collaboration. We need to come together. The whole community needs to come together with it, and to realise that to get these drugs to people, we need to work together with it. I did that something in my head then. I forgot what to say then.
It's the word collaboration that's thrown you.
It is. It's just done it. It's gone. That's it. With the vaccine, I've had a lot of airlines come to me over the last month, 2 months. Right, we are throwing everything into this. We believe there's a vaccine. We're setting ourselves up for the vaccine. And my question to most of them has been, why now? Why not when in the last 5-10 years that we've been moving these pharmaceuticals? Why all of a sudden now are you coming to the party? And that to me says it all. The whole vaccine thing should now help us to come together and collaborate a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think just another word that's used a lot now, but sustainability. So not just relating to carbon footprint, but also to, you know, having the sustainability awareness of what makes your company work and continue to work, so that you can provide jobs for people who can then look after their families. If everybody starts to realize less damage, less error, less waste, you know, focus on doing things right, quickly, at the right time, for the right reasons, etc. All of that engenders that sustainability culture, which will make people in itself start to care about their employer, their colleagues, themselves, their families. That's where the change will be, because it's no good looking back and saying, I wish we had. And, you know, they say hindsight, and I mean, who could ever have thought that this would happen in a year that had 2020 in it? Whether it's vision or whether it's to do with hindsight, it's almost like an extra kick in the pants that it's in 2020. So, you know, that's an awful thing. And Barry, what about yourself?
Yeah, Chris, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think sustainability has really come out of all this to be honest. I think it's one of those sort of and pretty much a nice to have prior to this type of thing, to the with COVID going on. But I think now it's really sort of sharpened people's minds to think, if you just look at the aircraft capacity, the last thing you want, and just to bring sort of food into play, for example, if you're moving food on aircraft, you really don't want that to spoil. The food and the pharma things are very, very well linked, because there's obviously a lot of temperature issues. So that air freight space is really valuable. And the last thing you want to do is waste that that space, that money that you put into it. So I think sustainability is going to be a big, it's going to be big to come out of this, and which is a good thing. And just to touch on the leadership side of things that you mentioned, I think the way the working from home thing, to me personally, is a really positive thing, because leadership, it puts the onus on the individual to be the leader. They've got to work at home and control their day. There's not the manager looking around over his shoulder to see what you're doing if you're going for a cup of tea. It's so again, it's another positive thing. It's allow people to be their own leaders, and you'll be judged for what you produce. So I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I do actually. I believe that people should be given a little bit more control of their own destinies, so to speak. I do feel that sometimes the GDP guidelines, they are very, this is how you do it, and sometimes I think maybe sometimes you should have a little bit of a leeway there. Allow people to think for themselves a little bit more, because otherwise you will end up with you just end up with robots.
Yeah.
I was just going back on what Barry said then about, you need to allow people to have their own views as well, I think. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And that's why I always think now, it's more important for people to know why.
Yes.
And as humans, when we were kids and babies, all we ever said to our parents was why, teachers, why, and then they knock it out of us by saying, you just got to do it because I said so. And then gradually, I think the only time that you automatically kick in to being a specialist again is when you first have children, because as soon as you suddenly turn up at home with a baby, everybody puts their sharp coffee tables away, you move your pills, you take everything away, you become a safety expert. Then you go into work and it suddenly goes again. So I think, that understanding why is far more important than what, where, when and how. It's the why that we need to put across to people.
Yeah, one thing I always find the issue, we get things issued to us by our HQ, and we'll go back and we'll say, well, why are we doing that?
Yep.
Because we're telling you to do it, just do it. And it's, to me, that's wrong. That people need to know why, otherwise you can't carry out your job properly.
Yeah, why? What helps you?
Yeah, the thing is, you learn by your mistakes. Any business is the same. Any business I've worked in and for, it's been a lot better because we've made mistakes and we've realised that didn't work, or that's wrong. How can we rectify it? And that's helped us improve and get where we are. I mean, again, with the whole the CAPA process we have in regards to GDP and in the pharma world, that's the whole point. Nothing's going to go perfectly, and that's the whole point. So you've got to just take it, learn from it, and improve what you do.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think everybody has all these little sayings, and it's always changing. But I think do fast, learn faster, and understand why is something that, if anything comes in history lessons to the next generation, hopefully they'll look back and say, do you know something? That's what they did in 2020, and that's why 2021 is even better. Yeah. Another issue I just want to get your opinions on, and if you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. But with the PPE, and if you look at the urgency, and again, we're talking about sustainability, in many cases, if people had had a correct risk assessed stock a year later, okay, they would have saved. It went up 10 times in cost, so they would have saved huge amounts of money that they could have spent somewhere else, either within their business or for whatever research or investment. Now, there's also tons and tons and tons, shipping containers, warehouses, still with stock in that doesn't meet standards, or counterfeit, or all sorts of problems. Now that must not be repeated. So the question I've just got for you is, do you think counterfeit vaccine and equipment, is going to be a threat that's that people need to be more vigilant about, or it's covered within the normal process?
Who knows? I don't think it'll be an immediate issue, but down the line, yeah. I mean, there are counterfeit drugs all over the place, aren't there?
Yeah.
So I mean, whether somebody's going to come up with a counterfeit vaccine, who knows? But
yeah, I agree, Mark. Yeah, I think it's probably a certain yes from me. I think it's inevitable that it will happen. There'll be some counterfeit therapies out there from this, and it sort of highlights the importance of GDP and working to the strict standards that we do, and GEODIS do as well, because that's the whole point. You've got a responsible person on site to make sure that they notice these small things, because they're the eyes of the business. But no, but certainly I think I'm pretty sure that it will happen. It's just mitigating the risk again and making sure that the supply chain is their eyes are open to it.
Yeah, exactly. Gents, we're almost at the end of the session, and thank you very, very much for your time, your attention. And I'm going to get Salem to take a picture, because I don't think I've had 3 people with beards or bad excuses for beards on at the same time before, so I'll hang that one up. But is there anything else you'd like to say? Because I think the message that everybody needs to know is, we've been doing this for years, and we've been improving how we do this for years. And this is now a catalyst to make sure that we've got the right preparation at the right time with the right people, doing what's necessary for people, because we're all only safe when everybody's safe. And let me ask you something. If the vaccine was available tomorrow, would you go and have it?
Yeah, I mean, I would, because it just allows. I mean, personally and professionally, I do a lot of traveling, and for me to be able to resume that again, just personally, my job to go and to globally and get these supply chains working. I need to do that. So that's just my personal.
You were in Dubai this week, weren't you?
I was, yes, indeed. For those very same reasons. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great example. I had to have a test prior to going, and we was obviously clear. So anything like that's good, and I think it will come to a stage where if you've got the vaccine, you can obviously start to travel a lot easier. And I certainly see why there are reservations about it, and I completely respect and understand anyone's view. But yeah, so it's it would certainly benefit me personally if I had it, and it allows me to be freed up to travel.
Would I take it tomorrow? No, but 2-3 months time, yeah. If that is the way we need to go to move forward.
Okay, and that would be to to protect others, as well as having more comfort with the period from being announced to being full on.
Yeah, to protect others, and also to so we can all move on with our lives, get back to some sort of normality.
So, I mean, just to finish on, and then I think as the industry did, where me and Mark work, I think it's probably safe to say, if it was going to happen with this whole situation, it's probably, we're probably better equipped now than we ever have been to help resolve the issues in regards to knowledge in solutions, packaging, temperature control, and GDP. The airlines, obviously, that they're hurting. So the sooner they can get back to normal, because they're such an important part of logistics globally. We need those airlines to survive and be around. So the sooner that it works, the better. But I certainly think as a global pharmaceutical logistics, businesses, and as a we're probably well placed now to deal with it than when we have been, I think.
Yeah, and please God, the sooner the better, because all of the poor people that have been affected, and God bless everybody that's been affected with a loss of a loved one or a friend. but equally full respect to everybody out there on the front lines, whether it's from NHS to logistics to delivering everybody's basics. It's made everybody realise who heroes actually are, and shouldn't be taking people for granted, which comes back to care again. Gents, absolute pleasure. Lovely to have you on board. Really, thank you for your time. And like I said, it did bring a smile to my face to see two men, with similar hair issues around their chins. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Chris. It was really good. Thanks, Mark. It was good. Good hour. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers, lads.
Yeah.
Thank you.